Shalom. We're going to speak a little bit about Taanis Esther, which is coming up very, very soon, and try to give a little meaning and purpose of what the Taanis Esther is all about, and some practical tips of how to experience it and to get the most out of the Taanis Esther. We all know what the Yishrei brings in some tough Rosh, the idea that we mimic what Esther and Mordechai did at the time of the Purim story, where they were involved in to Yeshiva to bring about an effect, a bittul, a canceling of the Gezerah that was made. It says in Yeshiva as a zecher to that experience, we have a Taanis Esther also. But the truth is, in many, many different svarim, there are other ideas that are spoken about that perhaps can give us a little bit more of a focus on a little bit of an interconnection to how to experience properly what we do during the Taanis Esther. There's a sefer by one of the great Rabbis called the Kav V'Yashar. And the Kav V'Yashar has two different comments about the nature and the avoda that we're supposed to do during the time of Taanis Esther. One idea that he speaks about is that Jews throughout the ages, and what also happened at the time of Mordechai and Esther, have been very, very influenced by our non-Jewish neighborhoods and environments. Mordechai and Esther's time, they went to the Suda of Achashverosh, and they were guilty of being nana from that Suda. And he points out that we nowadays have many different hashpos on us that come from the Umos HaOlam. A lot of those hashpos come from lifestyle, or involved in the world of lifestyle activities, eating, drinking, how we act, and so on and so forth. And says the Kav V'Yashar, before we walk into a time of Purim, which is meant to be a time of incredible Kedusha, the one thing we want to try to do is, he says, is try to weaken a little bit our quote-unquote physical self, to try to get rid of some of the, again, if we've eaten in a little bit of a goyish way, obviously the standards of kashrus weren't 100% the way we're supposed to be, or in terms of how we act, do we say enough to Torah at a meal, and so on and so forth. Some of the things that might have been a little quote-unquote non-Jewish, we try to give ourselves a day free of physical kind of activity, to be able to walk into Purim, which we're going to be engaged totally in Gashmias kinds of things, the Mishnah V'Simcha, but be free and have a little gap from our previous life of Mishnah, Simcha, Achila, Shasiya, and start off in a totally Jewish kind of a foot. But he also points out that part of the idea of the tshuva that we do on Taanis Esther is to remember the reasoning and how it was that Mordechai and Esther themselves had accomplished the changing around, the B'nai that brought about the story of Purim. And they point out that Mordechai and Esther, the Kav V'Yashar brings this in Peretz Design, that Mordechai and Esther stopped and looked, what was it that caused the chait? What chait was it that caused the gezerah, rather, that brought about the story of Purim? And he explains that when we start to dive into a Kadosh Baruch Hu, when we realize we have to do tshuva for things that were wrong in our lives. So it says the Kav V'Yashar something unbelievable. He says that the same way Mordechai and Esther stood and they davened, and he quotes many psukim in the Megillah that he weaves into the whole story of how they were standing in B'chatzer, Bisan, and Melech, they were standing in the courtyard of the king, standing in shuls and Batei Medrash, reaching out to a Kadosh Baruch Hu. And says the Kav V'Yashar, when a person stands and davens, and he says the Slichos and Taanis Esther, he's davening to the Ribono Shel Olam. So that person, when he's reaching out to Hashem, trying to say, how do I make myself better? That person, he says, it arouses the schus of Mordechai and Esther. And says the Kav V'Yashar, Mordechai and Esther are found with us in our shuls and our Batei Medrash, with ourselves, and we're davening privately. They are standing by our sides, giving us an incredible power, an incredible schus to have those tefillas that we're offering be actually answered by the Ribono Shel Olam himself. But to read a couple of lines out of the Kav V'Yashar, he points out that one thing a person should do during the course of Taanis Esther, he says, it's a day that's Mesugal Ma'od Shekabel Tfilaseinu B'Schus Mordechai Esther. Very auspicious time to have our tefillas be answered, whatever we're asking for, in the schus of Mordechai Esther, or with us when we're sitting and davening. He says as follows: Kol mi shetzarach rachem el ezer davar shetzarach lispal. If there's somebody that we know or something in our lives that needs some kind of rachem eshamayim, he says yikach pnai la'atzmo b'yom Taanis Esther. You should take some time, lock yourself in a room, quiet, private, free from everybody else. He says first say Perek Kav Beis in Sefer Tehillim, the Perek Tehillim of Vayalas HaShacher, which the Gemara is a new one. Kav Tesei was a reference to Esther Amalka. Start with that Perek of Tehillim, and then he says try to pour out your heart, dive into a Kadosh Baruch Hu for all the different issues that we might have in our lives, friends, family, and the surroundings. Of course, it's a great time to dive into Hashem, and we should have a very, very special and amazing kind of a Purim, not just fun, but meaningful and powerful in terms of the tshuva and the ma'asim tovim that are there. But in the schus of those tefillos, and trying to get to the roots of our ruchnius kind of ourselves, Perikav Beis in Tehillim, some free time with Mordechai and Esther. So Be'ez Hashem, we should walk away having a very, very powerful and potent Taanis Esther, leading into an amazing Freilich and Purim to all.